Thanks to the support as a channel member, Aidan C97. Remember when we were worried about the non-existent transfer budget I had at Tottenham? £250 million spent later. Hello and welcome to Club 3, Part 3 of Non-Lethal Legend. I'm Kevin. Coming up on today's episode, we have our last couple of games of January, which is an important league game against Leeds, a very important Champions League game, and I'll get to why that's very important in a minute. And we're going to get a bit of a teaser what might go down on deadline day, although we'll get a full deadline day report in the next video. As you can see, we do have a little bit of money going into deadline day as well, and also our committed spending is well below that wage budget as well. So there should be at least one, if not more, players still to come in. But we have been busy. Busy on the pitch. As you can see, we had a pretty successful rest of December. A pretty disappointing draw against Manchester United. We were ahead in that game, but we did batter Wolves 6-0 in the next match. Then got disappointed again against Leeds, but then battered Everton. So we're good when we want to be good. When we're tired, we're not very good. But what we did find is because of all the transfers we've done, Champions League is going to be an issue. We've got the same problem Chelsea are going to face in real life, in that we've done so many transfers. We're basically playing the reserves and youth team in the Champions League. It's not ideal. But let me talk you through those transfers. We have spent a few quid, £262 million spent. Not completely lost my mind. We've brought in £150 million from player sales as well. So if we quickly go through the player sales so you can see who's gone where, a lot of this, rather than clearing out the old men, most of them are just going to leave on a free at the end of the season because no one wants to buy them. A lot of this has been selling the huge bulk of like 3.5 star potential 21, 22-year-olds that were knocking around the club for 20 or 30 million pounds a pop that I guess had been bought in with some kind of plan to replace the likes of Kane and Son, and they were never going to do it. So we've moved them on. But Christian Romero is an old man we got money for. We got £6 million from Al Ittihad for him, which got a huge chunk off the wage budget. Our backup goalkeeper, Mark Travers, went to Brighton for £2.2 million. Buendia went to Marseille. We already know about that. That was arranged in the last episode. Javi Galan, our 35-year-old left back, who had been our starting left back. We sold him for next to nothing. He was out of contract at the end of the season, but it got his salary out of the way so we could reinvest. And then Zoran Matic is the first of these young players who just aren't good enough to play in the Premier League and never will be. I don't know why there were so many of them here, but goodness me, am I glad I found them. Another one, Jesse Puig, however, we never did decide how to sign that with the guy at Barcelona who's not at Barcelona anymore. But he's gone to Mexico. The club turning a nice little profit on him as a player that they've never used. Sergio is the first of several players who went to AEK Athens. He's another striker. Decent transfer value range for him now, and a decent turnaround as well. A player who was brought in for £4.8 million in the summer, was never used, has been sold on for £21.5 million. Saif Al-Blouchi is another young striker who now has a very impressive looking transfer range, and apparently he would be a terrific signing for the future. I mean, he's cast as 4-star potential ability now. When we had him, he was definitely only showing as 3, so take that with a pinch of salt. But he's another one who was brought in and sold on at a big profit, and then obviously we've been able to reinvest that money. Diego Medina is the 3rd striker we sold to AEK. I don't know what they need with 3 strikers from Tottenham, but it's another one where we've turned a nice little profit on them. And then we've also sold Inigo Guret. How many of these 21, 22-year-old strikers did Spurs need? I don't really understand. They've all been brought in and not used. This guy has never played a game for Tottenham. Did sell on for double his money, nice big profit. But why is he here? I don't understand. A 4th young striker went to AEK Athens. What on earth is going on there? I wasn't paying attention to this at the time, but they've signed 4 strikers, 4 22-year-old strikers from us for a total of £87 million in the January transfer window. I presume they've got a plan. Their squad is now going to be as lopsided with useless youngsters as ours was. But all of that brought in £150 million. Big thank you to AEK Athens, who presumably have got a tycoon and are just throwing money around like crazy people. Nope. There's no explanation. I don't know why that happened. And we then were able to reinvest that money. First name through the door is a very familiar one. Gianmarco Valente comes in from old club Preston. We weren't able to get de Klerk or Blanco or Reyes, all these players that I'd quite skillfully tied down to very long-term contracts with very large release clauses, and Preston just want the release clause. One player we didn't have that with was Valente. So Preston have made a nice little profit. We get a Premier League quality defender for £47.5 million, which we needed with so many of them having left the club. We then followed it up later that same day with a second young Premier League defender, Flynn Posselt, German international from Liverpool, who has come in and looks really, really good. I mean, look at the state of that. Lovely old stuff. We then were a little bit derailed in our plan because we got a season-ending injury to Gregor Kobel, our goalkeeper. So I then kind of had to abandon my goalkeeper plan. My goalkeeper plan was sign Dennis Simon from Preston in the summer. When he gets upset, Preston won't sell him now because he's only just joined them. So we had to go and get Gavin Bazunu. It's a pretty decent consolation prize. He's a 4-star current ability goalkeeper, and we did have to pay his full £38.5 million release clause as a lump sum, though. No never shenanigans there, but we were desperate. We had no goalkeeper. We some of these matches where we were dropping points were because we were playing a youth team goalkeeper. So yeah, we had to go and get a goalkeeper. We then brought in a left back, all about fixing the defence. Marcos Vallejo is a Spanish under-21 international left back with 4.5-star potential. He comes in from Inter. And then we also signed Brian Andre, who is a French under-19 international winger who can play on either side. He's very quick, nice pacey winger, just to add a little bit of youth and pace to our front four. And then Harry Kane's replacement, Ismail Sen, or Shen, how do you say it with the accent on? A 22-year-old German international elite striker already. He's 6'4", decent acceleration. He is like your prototype big meaty boy football manager striker. He's only 22 years old. I had kind of decided I was going to keep Harry Kane at the club until I signed this guy. Now he's in for £31.5 million after scoring at more than a goal every other game in Bundesliga this season. I have now accepted an offer from Inter for Harry Kane and will let him go. So there is still going to be transfer business to be done. We are not finished yet. Our Champions League squad is a mess. You'll see what we have to put out in the Champions League in the second match of today's video. But for the first one against Leeds, we're going to see a debut of Ismail Shen. We're just going to call him Ismail, I think. And we're going to see how he gets on. But look at this wonderful new look defence. Bazunu in goal, Posselt at left back, Valente, Trilli and Taylan Bullet. That is a massively different back five to what we had before. And once they are gelled, they are going to be outstanding. And the best thing is their age. 21. Trilli was already here. He's only 26. We've got 24 there. Bazunu as a goalkeeper is only 27. And we've obviously got the young left back as well, Vallejo, who's only 22. We've still got Pedro Porro knocking around, who at 30 will probably be moving on soon enough. We could probably do with one more defender, but we have still got Andreas Christensen at the club for now. If he moves on before the window closes, we'll probably look to bring in another defender. Then Ravella and Barella in midfield. They're going to be together for a little while, I think. 28 years old for Ravella and Barella. I've actually given an extended contract to a 32-year-old. I have changed. Mudryk, Kulusevski and Kvaratskhelia, we know are a great attacking midfield front three. And then we've got the new boy Brian Andre who can cover on either wing. I'd quite like an attacking midfielder to back up Kulusevski, although Ameth Tull has played there. Obviously, Harry Kane, if he stays, can play there, as can Son. And then the new boy Ismail Sen up front. It's a good-looking team. Let's get it out there. And this is the first time this 11 have played together. Dynamics might be a little bit of an issue for us because we have done a lot of transfers in this January. And as you saw, we have just lost a Champions League game. So not everything is looking rosy and happy. One thing we have done, though, is moved above Preston in the Premier League. I said that was a goal for the end of January. We have moved above Preston, now managed by Eddie Howe. But it does, if we finish above them, especially if we get into Europe and they don't, it makes it that much easier to go and raid them for a couple more players in the summer, which will definitely be the plan. I've still got my eye on de Klerk, which is why I'm a little bit wary of bringing in too many defenders now, because I see de Klerk coming in to partner Valente or Posselt as our starting centre-backs, but we can't get him now. Likewise, I think we probably go with Bazunu as our goalkeeper now, so the idea of getting Simon or Blanco is now probably done. I think Bazunu is good enough to be our goalkeeper for a long time to come. But Reyes is very much still on the radar as well, although he would obviously find himself as a backup to the new boy, who is even better than he is, but of course does need to get up to speed in the Premier League. He doesn't speak the language. This is his Premier League debut. It might take him a little bit of time to settle in. Here he is, though, playing it into the path of Kulusevski, who wellies it in from range. It's an 8th goal of the season for Kulusevski, and it's a first assist for Ismail Sen as well, which is a lovely way for him to get up and running in a Tottenham shirt. I feel like we could probably still use one more attacker if we assume Kane and Son, well, they're both gone in the summer. Even Kane might be gone now. Son's out of contract in the summer. So we probably do need one more. We've obviously got Andre. We've got Bargy as well, but we need that. But really, I mean, Jim Watson at Preston might be ideal if rather than Reyes, although Reyes can obviously play as that attacking midfielder as well. But someone who can offer cover for both Kulusevski and Sen might be exactly what we need. But this team already starting to take shape. Yes, we've spent a few quid to do it, but you know what? The board wanted a rebuild. The board are getting a rebuild. We're signing young players that we are then going to be able to sell on for a profit. The proof of that really is what's going on at Preston now, where Valente's sold on for a massive profit, and the other players that I want we can't get because Preston are able to demand so much for them. When the likes of Reyes and de Klerk do leave, they are going to be for massive fees. So I know how to sign a player to sell for a profit. This board just need to have a little bit of faith. They were a little bit iffy with me a couple of weeks ago. I think it was when we lost. It might have been against Leeds. I think we dropped points in the reverse fixture of this one. And at the time, we ended up dropping back down to about 13th in the league. And they started to get a little bit wary. They were disappointed at how I was performing against my goal to finish in the Europa League this season. As you can see, since then, we've won a few games. And thanks to the fall of Preston, which is a very sad sentence, we are looking like we've got a little bit more of a chance. It's great that it's Arsenal that we're chasing. I love it when Football Manager just presents you with a story, but we're only 3 points outside of that top 7 at the moment. And if we can get into the Europa League, then the board are going to be happy and hopefully back me with more money to invest in de Klerk. De Klerk is my big aim for the summer. I want de Klerk. It's one of the reasons why the 2 centre-backs I've signed are both left-sided. It makes it a little bit tricky to play them together now. We have got Trilly, who is right-sided, but de Klerk, that position is going to be his. Trilly will then be back up to him and covering at right-back. And then I want, between the youngster, who's the young left-back, Valente and Posselt, I want them to be the 3 who compete for these 2 spots. And then we can have youngsters filling in the other bits. But if we have 3 players who can cover these positions, 3 who can cover these positions, then a couple of youngsters, that feels like a sensibly put together defence to me. But we need to be able to sign de Klerk to make that happen. I am aware we've just conceded a goal as well, which is a long way from ideal against a team we should be beating. I know they're only 4 points below us in the league, but we are very much a team in form. Leeds, not necessarily so. Although, like I say, we did drop points against them the last time we played them. So they might be a little bit of a bogey team for us. We have, of course, got Harry Kane on the bench who can come on and replace Sen if he needs replacing. Or I guess he could replace Kulusevski or anyone really in that attack. I think officially Harry Kane can play left wing. Not that I think a 36-year-old Harry Kane would be the best idea on the left wing, especially when we've already got Son down on the bench as well. I think that's probably unnecessary. But we've got options. At least in the Premier League, we have options. And I can't emphasise enough how this is a very different scenario in the Champions League, where I do have to be wary because the board are looking for us to reach the latter stages of the Champions League. I would like to know what they define as the latter stages. We're pretty much through to the knockout rounds, but we're unlikely to go any further because of the team we're going to have to put out. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But we have just gone back into the lead in this game through, and I still can't say his name, Kvaratskhelia. I've said it the same way both times there, I think. But it's a lovely little interplay from our 2 inside forwards. Mudryk sliding it across to Kvaratskhelia. I don't know. What's his first name? What is his first name? That's no easier. Vitcher? He's good, though. We like him. We just can't say his name. I'm sure the comments will enlighten me on how we say it. Right, we're going to bring on Milinkovic-Savic, one of many players. Is he one of the ones? Actually, he's not out of contract in the summer. He's got one more year. He's on the transfer list, but no one seems to want him. But there are a lot of players that we've marked for release at the end of their contract. Some of you might be wondering how we've had quite so much money to spend. It's because we've marked a lot of these older players who are out of contract in the summer. We've marked them as set for release already, which takes them out of the projected wage budget, which means we can then spend that wage budget as if they've already gone, even though they're not going for 6 months. So it's just allowed us to do a little bit of forward planning. We're basically spending some of next season's money now to fix the current emergency that the club were in, because this is a club who were in a relegation fight when I arrived. So I think it's completely reasonable for us to use the full extent of my financial shenanigans to get them out of a pickle. We're not going to go and spend £250 million every January. We're not Chelsea, but we're doing a rebuild, and sometimes you have to throw some money around. And remember, it is only a net spend. Only, he says, it's only a net spend of 90 million, which isn't unreasonable for a team with top 4 aspirations to spend 90 million net spend in a window. I don't think. I think that's fine. It's a bit weird they gave me such a small budget to begin with, but I can only assume they gave me that really small budget because they expected me to do this. Because otherwise they'd give me more money. They just wanted me to. They did say I'd have to sell players before I can buy. It's what I've done. I know what I'm doing. We're 3-1 up as well. This is more lovely football. Kulusevski with the finish. Our new boy up front hasn't really done too much yet. We've actually changed the tactic around for this game. I talked about it a bit in yesterday's video about how we were kind of playing Kane or Son as a deep line forward and letting everyone run beyond them. That's not really Sen's game. So we've gone back to something closer to the Preston version of the 4-2-3-1 for this match, with Sen playing as that advanced forward, dropping Kulusevski a little bit deeper and trying to create chances for our elite 22-year-old striker. It hasn't really worked out that way, although I guess he is keeping the defenders occupied and allowing the 3 behind him that little bit of extra space to play, and they are very much enjoying that extra space because it's now 4-1 and it's Kvaratskhelia again. And this is lovely football. Look at us go. Milinkovic-Savic with the ball over the top, and that's just a nice finish. That's exactly what we should be doing in this setup. Look at the match stats. We are good value for this lead, and this has just been a very good performance. Right, we're going to bring on Pedro Porro. We're going to bring Brian Andre on. He has already made his debut. He's either-footed and fast, which is the main reason I've signed him. He doesn't have huge potential, but I view him as like an Adama Traore kind of signing. If you watch the network game where I managed Everton last year, you'll know that I had Adama Traore, who was very similar. Looked like he shouldn't be good enough, but because he was so fast and could play on either side, he was just a nuisance to bring on late in matches. And that's what I really want from Andre. Just a nuisance to come on with 10, 15, 20 minutes to go, just to run at tired fullbacks off of either wing. He doesn't really need to have much in the way of end product. Just run at them. And if he ends up better than that, super. But there he is, running at a fullback, exactly what we were looking for. Creates a bit of space for Porro, gets it back, runs a bit more, plays it across to Kulusevski. This is lovely football. And our young left-back, Marcos Vallejo, has got his first goal for the club. It's 5-1 now. This has been a very, very good performance from this very new-look Tottenham team. I wish I could be confident of us doing this in the Champions League, but like I say, you're not going to see this team. We are not, because we're still in the league stages, we haven't been able to register a single one of our new signings yet, and a lot of players have left. We only have one centre-back in our Champions League squad. So Calvin Phillips had to play centre-back in the previous game, and yeah, it is problematic. I think we can register 3 of the new signings for the knockout rounds after we get through, assuming we get through. But that is, I think it's an if. Can we still fall out the top 24? Roma are on 6 points. We are on 11. Okay, so we are through. So we don't need to worry too much. We're also very unlikely to get into the top 8. We just need to kind of survive and not get humiliated, and then try and work out. I guess we need to put at least 2 of the new defenders into the squad, which means we might be about to sell Harry Kane and not be able to register our new striker. Like I say, for this season, the Champions League is an absolute write-off. So that team for the previous match, I was very excited about. This one, not so much. And it's mainly up front and then in defence. That back 4, not quite the same, is it? The only goalkeeper in the Champions League squad is injured, Quintilla, who is just going to have to play injured because he's the only one we've got. He was down in our under under 18s, under 23s, whatever team he was in, and we brought him up into the first team squad to be our backup goalkeeper for the rest of the season. So that's how he's able to play. No, he must have been in the Champions League squad because he's 22. Either way, he's injured and has got to play. This guy, Phil Brindley, 19, great prospect. Probably not at left back, although definitely my kind of left back. I'm probably more like, very similar. I'm getting Rojas vibes, but he can actually tackle. He was out on loan at Brighton in the Championship. We've brought him in, mainly use him in the Champions League. We haven't used him in the league yet, and he's going to play alongside Calvin Phillips. And then Trilly is the only survivor from that starting back four in the previous game. Porro having to come in at right back because, unbelievably, Thailand Bullet is one of the many players who's unregistered in this squad. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 members of our current first team squad not registered. Christensen is injured. Son is now got a virus and is going to be out for a couple of weeks. Koebel out for the rest of the season. Bargi's injured as well. This is not ideal. We've brought Harry Kane back in front. By the way, Harry Kane turned down the move to Inter. He wants a coaching position at Spurs, so probably I'm going to let him have that. Probably. But so we've gone back to having him as the deep lying forward with Kulusevski pushing forward a little bit more for one night only. It doesn't really matter what the result is in this match. I just wanted to show you the absolute state of our Champions League squad because of these transfers that we've done. Losing to Marseille in the previous match was a little bit of a culture shock because we'd been on such a good run of form. And in fact, talking of runs of form, I just had a little look at Preston because I wondered how they'd fallen down the league so much. They haven't won a league game since I left. Eddie Howe, I don't think is going to be very long as Preston manager. They've picked up maybe 3 points from a few draws since that first match where I beat them. It's a problem, but I guess, I think I removed all the relegation release clauses, which is unfortunate because I'm looking at, but I guess the likes of de Klerk and Reyes, if Preston were to get relegated, which seems very harsh in a season where they were looking good for Champions League football, I'm not that much better than Eddie Howe. Surely, obviously, we all acknowledge I'm a better manager than Eddie Howe, but that much better? But they genuinely, the form they're in could get relegated, which will certainly change the shape of my summer shopping spree because a number of those boys will be trading one Lily Whites. Do Spurs call themselves the Lily Whites as well? I feel like they both do. One set of Lily Whites for another. Mudryk is in behind here. Going forward, this team's not too bad. Obviously, most of my time here at Spurs so far, we've played with Harry Kane in this withdrawn forward role. So it's not a disaster to have to do that again for this match. It's just defensively, I am very wary. I would like to think we probably have enough about us going forward to outscore Bodo Glimt, even if they do manage to snatch a few up the other end, and we have already got out. We're going to say it, our first of the evening, because I would expect us to score a few goals with this front four, this midfield. Barella's done very well there to charge through from central midfield, justifying his contract extension. And there is centre-back Calvin Phillips, whose contract does expire at the end of the season. He's one of those players whose current wage isn't being taken into account on our upcoming, future wage budget, whatever they call it. That's not the word. He's one of the players who, by agreeing to release him this early, have allowed us to spend what we've spent so far this January. And I say so far because transfer deadline day is tomorrow, and I do expect to do more business. I'll show you that in tomorrow's video, but I don't think I'm done spending. I might be done with big headline spending, but if we can bring in a couple of youngsters, like proper youngsters, 18-year-old youngsters, sub £10 million youngsters, I don't know that we need anyone else to come into the first team now. I think we've got a first 11 and 3 or 4 good level substitutes to get us through to the end of the season and have a proper look of things in the summer. But we have sold a lot of the upcoming young players, so I don't think it would hurt to bring in a couple of 18-year-olds now who will become homegrown at club further down the line. It seems, I don't know if it's a glitch in FM23. It didn't used to be this way in older versions of the game. But if you sign an 18-year-old in January, it only takes them 2.5 years to become homegrown at club. They seem to get it that third summer rather than having to do like the full 3 seasons. They do the 6 months, then a year, then another year, then they're homegrown at club. I don't know why it's happening, but I've noticed it happen in a few different saves now. So signing 18-year-olds in January seems to be a pretty solid strategy. And we have got some good young players of our own coming through. Brindley's a perfect example of that, only 19 years old. So it's one of the reasons why we need to be a little bit wary of signing too many players who can play in positions that we've got good young players coming through, because one of the things the board want is for us to develop our own youth players. So Brindley is the first example of that coming into our first team. I guess Quintilla could be another one, although realistically, he's in here very much on a needs-must basis. We've got 2 Premier League quality goalkeepers at the club now. This time through injury, I've ended up in a similar situation to what I was in at Preston. So I don't think he's going to get much football once Coble is fit again. We might even look to sell Coble in the summer, go all in on Bazzuno and try and find a younger goalkeeper to sit on the bench. Maybe Blanco if Preston get relegated, because I noticed he's lost his place at Preston. Simon is now starting regularly at Preston. So Blanco, as like a 21-year-old, making the step up to a big club. God, that hurts to say. He might be ideal to bring in if we can get him for the right price. I'm not paying £100 million for him, obviously. It's not that I want Preston to get relegated. I'm not a monster, but I'd quite like to be able to raid them and get a few of my boys here at Tottenham. A few more of my boys. Obviously, we've got Valente. But I really want De Klerk. I really want Reyes. I think if I end up with those 2 as well, I will be absolutely delighted. Barella is just everywhere on this pitch. I told you all along from the beginning that his natural fitness would mean he'd be a useful player for us for a couple more years, and he has definitely shown it. He's become probably our key player in this system, just non-stop, all-action running, getting involved at both ends of the pitch. He basically defines box-to-box midfielder and has been fantastic. So I just wish he was 5 years younger, because then we'd make him captain and build the squad around him. But if we can find a 21-year-old version of him, that would be ideal. 4-0 up, 25 minutes ago. I think we are going to look to make some changes in a moment. We don't really have much on our bench. We certainly didn't come close to filling a bench, but the games are still coming thick and fast. I think we've got another Premier League game coming up this coming weekend, so we do need to be careful of managing match fitness as our players are still getting used to playing this high-tempo system. We have brought in a lot of new coaching staff. So there's, I'd like to think fitness levels are improving. We're not having as many players needing to go on holidays as we were before. So that's a positive. But we do still have more than I would like old men knocking around the place. So we need to be a little bit careful managing their fitness levels. And that's a beautiful finish from Kulusevski, who's probably someone who does need to come off, actually. Who else have we got on the bench? Not very much. You know what? I'm going to bring on Barrett. Another one of our youngsters who has been lurking around the squad. Give him his 20 minutes so it counts for his player development. So he's 21 years old, decent potential as well. I mean, we've only 4-ish stars of potential. I wouldn't be against selling him for 40 million if Wolves want to come and offer silly money for him. But for now, let's develop him. He wants to be a winger, so let him be a winger. And then we've got Komi Isifu, who 5 stars of potential for this lad. He managed to avoid the cull despite being here for 5 years. I think we kept him around because of homegrown status, he says. But has he been loaned out? Why is he not? I don't understand. He's 21. Maybe he doesn't hit homegrown status. But with that kind of potential, makes sense just to keep him knocking around the place anyway. We're going to bring him on for Kulusevski. And then Arwell Williams, I guess, is the other player we can bring on. Not quite so good. Someone we have got on the transfer list, but we're 6-0 up, 5-0 up. However many nils up we are, I think we can just rest as many first teamers as we possibly can. Don't really need to rest anyone in the back 4 or the goalkeeper, because there's not much in the way of first teamers back there. But these midfielders and attackers who are key to the way we play, they need to be getting some rest. There is transfer listed Arwell Williams, I think he was trying to cut it back, but it took a deflection and almost snuck past the goalkeeper. And he didn't get... I don't think it would have counted as a goal for him anyway. I think it probably would have counted as an own goal, because I don't think he was aiming anywhere near the goal with it. Here is Trilly holding this very makeshift defence together on his own today, playing it across to Calvin Phillips, who's currently the deepest Tottenham player on the pitch. And now Mudryk using his turn of pace to burst past his defender. He has been a goal-scoring revelation for us. Barely scored before I arrived at the club, but now is a regular in amongst the goals and has looked very dangerous again today, picking up a goal and an assist. And I think this is probably going to be our last highlight. There is young Isifu with all of his potential, and completely miscued that one, and it ends up safely in the hands of the goalkeeper, but he's going to continue lurking around just in case there's a loose ball that emerges for him. There wasn't. And now Bodo Glimt are on the attack. I mean, this is what they should have been doing all game long, just peppering our injured young goalkeeper with shots. I mean, they've only had 2 shots on target in the whole match. They probably should have tried to test the goalkeeper a little more, but I just don't think they're very good. And it's fine. A 5-0 win. If only we'd have managed to get a result against Marseille, we might have actually got top 8. It was frustrating that we dropped points the way we did there. But we're comfortably through to the knockout rounds. I don't know if that's enough to satisfy the board. They're pleased. So, okay, quarterfinal is what they're looking for. So we need to win the next round as well, which is going to be a challenge. They are disappointed with our league performance. So we need to start moving up the league a little more. I mean, we are up to 11th place, but we are 6 points behind Arsenal all of a sudden. I don't know how that's happened, but we'll worry about that tomorrow, where we'll have deadline day, probably the Champions League next round, and whatever else goes on. It's all action here, bunch of shenanigans going on. If you've enjoyed that, please make sure you leave a nice big thumbs up on there for me. Subscribe to the channel for daily Football Manager videos. Thank you very much for watching.